They taught us a simple story, that science had a birthplace, that knowledge had a color, that before the ships arrived, Africa was empty, waiting for light. But no land with people is empty. No civilization with memory is blank.
Africa was not a blank slate waiting for science. It had systems, it had methods, it had medicine, engineering, astronomy, agriculture, metallurgy. The story we inherited was edited. In the late 1800s, a European doctor stood in the court of the Buganda Kingdom and watched something he was not prepared to see. A woman cut open to save her child. Not chaos, not ritual, but calm, deliberate hands, controlled bleeding, a newborn pulled into breath. The doctor's name was Robert Felkin. He wrote it down because he couldn't unsee it. The mother lived, the baby lived. This was not luck. This was practiced knowledge.
Science is not white coats. Science is not buildings. Science is not Latin names. Science is this: observe, test, repeat, refine. African societies did this without calling it science. Midwives learned how to turn babies in the womb. Healers learned which plants calmed pain. Metal workers learned which heat hardened iron. Farmers learned which crops healed the soil. It worked. And because it worked, it was dangerous to the story of superiority.
Erasure doesn't always burn libraries. Sometimes it just stops teaching. First, they observe. They write notes. They are impressed. Then, they dismiss. They call it native, folk, primitive. Then, they replace. They build schools that do not teach what came before. They reward forgetting. Finally, they rediscover. They rename what already existed. They patent what was once shared. This is how knowledge disappears without ever being destroyed.
They said Africa had no engineers. Then they stood before the walls of Great Zimbabwe. They said Africa had no scholars. Then they found libraries in Timbuktu. They said Africa had no mathematics. Then they unearthed the Ishango Gom. They said Africa had no cities. Then they mapped the ruins of Meroe. And still, the story stayed the same. Because once a myth becomes curriculum, it becomes memory. What colonization broke was not intelligence. It broke continuity. Knowledge lives through teachers, through apprentices, through repetition. When that chain is broken, people begin to doubt what their ancestors knew. You feel it today, in the way we distrust our own medicine, in the way we admire distant knowledge more than local wisdom, in the quiet shame we carry about who we were. That wound is not in history books, it's in identity.
This is not Africa versus Europe. This is balance. Africa was not waiting for science. Africa was practicing it in its own languages, with its own tools, through its own systems. We don't need to rewrite history. We just need to read the parts that were skipped. The story isn't that Africa had no science. The story is that Africa's science was never allowed to become curriculum.